Well, you're standing on the no-kidding flight deck of the Spruce Goose. The idea was to move troops or cargo across the North Atlantic because German U-boats were really giving us some static. But anyway, the idea was just to build a lot of flying boats and fly over the top of the German U-boats. Unfortunately, the Goose didn't get finished until 1947, and the war had been over for about 2 years when Howard flew. The nice thing is we're still in the old flight test configuration. We haven't really moved too much around. They put these stairs in somewhere. They were not there for the flight. But this stuff was pretty much just the way it is right now. It's kind of handy actually, because I can show you stuff, and they haven't, moved it off or put it down in the bilge where it's hard to get at. The forward station is the hydraulics. They're twin systems, which was almost unheard of. You didn't have redundant systems back then. And it was the first hydraulically boosted flight control system ever built. What you've got there is a big electric motor, powers a hydraulic pump that puts out 2,000 psi, which gets stored in that accumulator, which is the olive drab thing that's vertical, and then that services all these lines. They're coming down from the cockpit into little hydraulic actuators, and then you run back to another little actuator when your aileron or your rudder or whatever flight control you're going to. The second one here is the primary DC battery bus, and the batteries are stored in these two raised boxes, and all the electricity is pulled out by the bus and put into the aircraft. But kind of interesting, right by my flight-worthy chair there, they have a thing called that looks like a helicopter collector. It's actually a quick disconnect switch for all the DC power in the aircraft. Howard was paranoid about a few things, but wooden airplane, aviation fuel, and electricity. Probably one to be paranoid about.
Yeah. Natural paranoid.
Yeah, just kind of watch your step on it. Rest of the spiral. Basically, it's a jet engine. I made a correct like a jet engine.
Holy crap.
Kind of use your imagination a little bit. Imagine this side over there, and then you'd have what it really looked like up here. They stripped the skin off on this side and put the plexiglass in down in Long Beach just to make it so people could see in from the outside. But back here, we're actually inside the wing right now. The leading edge is right up here, and it's about 50 feet back to the trailing edge. And this is the first bulkhead that you run into, and as you can see, you got all your wing access here. You can see all the way out to the fourth engine. Each time you run into a set of pipes like this, there's an engine about 20 feet out in front of it. It's kind of like a little oil derrick on its side, where it necks down. The four lower lines are gasoline. It's all stored down on the bilge and then pumped up through these two lines. Goes out those four into this tank briefly, and then out to the engines. The four higher lines, or oil lines, we've got 30 gallons on each radial. Radials use a lot of oil, so we've got 450 gallons right there behind you to top those tanks off. The chairs, I believe, are original, and the way I sort of proved that is, you see the airline seats these days that are this wide?
Yeah.
And of course there are no seat belts, and each one of them's got an ashtray. So everybody in 1947 smoked. The stations back here, this one, that one, and the two little ones, were primarily for collecting data for flight test. We had stress and strain here. This little analog computer was the one that set all the ranges up on the gauges so that you could manually record what your strains were around the aircraft on different channels that were coming in. And On this one, we were monitoring temperature through about 26 different thermocouples, and that was recorded automatically on the little seismograph type thing. I won't go on up because you guys are going to go up and up. Either take your picture or you guys can take pictures of each other, whichever way you want to do it. But the stations that would have stayed had we become operational would have been and feel free to go on up in front of me if you want, are the flight engineer station and the radio operator nav table, which is behind me here. And then of course the pilot and co-pilot's positions. Yeah, I would just ask that you don't play with the switches or the controls because they're really hard to find replacements for.
It's all those extra buttons on this.
Wow.
Can you tell that Howard was sitting on this side? Actually, the biggest difference, or the most noticeable difference, to me is that there are 8 throttles up there now, and the day he flew it there were only 4. He didn't think he had enough control of the engine, so he made the guys retrofit it for him back to 8, so that he had 1 engine per 1 throttle. Didn't really trust his flight engineer.
So is this
thinking?
Is this the original seat that Howard Hughes sat in?
I think you're sitting in it, yeah.
Yeah, what you want to do.
Yeah, the only change that I can see from the original photos is the addition of this thing, and that's part of the stairway air circulation system. And I swore up and down that this was part of the seat for the longest time, and then I noticed that in one of those, on that closed loop slideshow we've got down below, there's one with Howard, I think about where you are, except I think he's standing up and leaning over the center console, and that tube's not there. So that was added sometime after. Oh, it's a lease.
Hey.
With a wing on it.